The night has come, it's cold and losing my control. Your light is gone, and lonely darkness fill my soul. I wish that you could save me from my isolation. It's way too complicated. Let's start this conversation. Let's start this conversation. We got no relation.
Good evening, and if you're just tuning in, you are listening to or watching live UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio Network. This is the Angel Rock, and I'm your host, Lorilei Potvin. I'm a Canadian psychic medium, crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner, a spiritual teacher and mentor. Can't talk again tonight. I'm also a registered nurse and well-versed in near-death experiences, having studied them for over 40 years professionally and personally. And I believe I had one as a toddler, and extremely well-versed in the paranormal. I always say it was not by choice, it found me. And this lovely lady is actually part of our story. You'll see her on it. I mention it every show. Michelle Desrochers is here with us tonight. And we shared a story on Paranormal Survivor, season 4, episode 9, and it's called Demonic Hauntings. I did not know Michelle back then, but I know her very well now. I can do a little bit more housekeeping here. I want to say a huge thank you to Carnation. They're responsible for all the shows here on Mondays. It's Carnation Monday, we call it here on UPRN. And it's a global brand. So if you're out shopping and you happen to see some Carnation on your shelves when you're shopping, please consider supporting them because they bring all the great shows to you here on our wonderful network. I have my little checklist here, Michelle, just so you know. So if you guys want to watch us on TV, you can. We do have our own TV channel on Roku. You're going to go to the channel store, type in UFO space P as in paranormal. There's a drop down list, and you're looking for about the third or fourth one down, and it's going to say UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio, and that's how you can watch us. And this network has been around for 25 plus years, and we do broadcast to every country in the world, which is a beautiful thing. So, and we have multiple shows that stream live 7 days a week. And when we're not streaming live, the archive server kicks in. So UPRN is pretty well live all the time. So I always say, though, I think is it 80 or 85% of our audience, Michelle, that's audio only, I think, right?
Yeah, we have access to international audio servers that go all around the world. So yeah, I would say audio mostly. A lot of our archive sites, we're on over 200 different archive sites. Most are audio, but of course you get us on all of the.
Well, what I tell them though, if you're listening live, because we involve people in our conversations on our show. So if you're listening, you're thinking, I want to join the conversation, we'd love to have you join us. I always say, if you can't see us, that's why you're not able to join in. So we do have some sites that you can see us on. I'll rattle them off very quickly. I'm on my page under Lorilei Potvin profile on Facebook. Also, my YouTube channel, The Angel Rock with Lorilei Potvin. We're on LinkedIn under Lorilei Potvin. And we are actually on Instagram this evening on The Angel Rock on Instagram. Also, I have it streaming to UFO Paranormal. UFO Paranormal United Public Radio Network on Facebook. I had to think because I changed some platforms. Streaming to Michelle's Beyond the it's Canada's Most Haunted on Facebook, and we are streaming on your YouTube channel. I believe is it under the Outer Realm? Outer Realm. Yes, and I'm very happy to have Michelle back here. I have this big long bio for you, but everybody knows you. She's incredible.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Knowledgeable about the paranormal. She has incredible shows on the network. She is also our network manager, and she does a fabulous job at that as well. So, and I thought we were looking for a date, and I said, hey, I got you booked to come on because I was on the Outer Realm on a Wednesday night, October the 1st. Love to see you guys check that out. You can find it on our UPRN YouTube channel, your YouTube channel, and then Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Rumble, everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. So
All
you
of
can
our shows go everywhere. Yeah.
because it's spooky month. So we started talking about exorcisms and demons because it's spooky month. And we said, let's do part 2 this evening, right?
Yes. Yes. It's always so much fun. I always
Well,
love
let's say
coming
hi
on.
to everybody. I'll do it quickly. We've got Janie Mashburn saying hello, Lorilei and Michelle. A Taurus Girl Reed saying hi to both of us. Carrie Fast, hello, ladies. Let's see, Mark Eddy's here. And I always love to give Michelle, or Mish, I forget she goes by Mish on here. She's over in Australia, so I always say she's watching us from the future because it's Tuesday morning
That's
over in
true.
Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah. I call her my birthday twin too, because
Oh.
her birthday is the day before mine in August, but we have that overlap with the time zones. So
Yeah.
I say birthday twins. So she's saying hello. We got Julie Jean Bassett saying hi to everybody. Always give her a shout out, you guys, if you need help with your animals. She's your lady. She's helped me with many. I know she's worked with Carrie Lynn. She's been on your show. She's been on my show. I believe she's been on Carrie Lynn's show. She also is a pet medium and healer, so you can check her out at juliejeanbassett.com. She's also an incredible shamanic practitioner. I've had a session with her that was actually life-changing. So you can find her for the shamanic stuff on Whitetail, shamanichealing.com. Let's see. Heidi Gall is here saying hi to me and you and everybody. I love that everybody's so kind to another here in our chat. That's the beauty in it all. So we said, let's do part 2 tonight. So should we refresh their memories a little bit about what we talked about on your show? Because we were talking about exorcisms, possessions, infestations, and attachments, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think sometimes people get them confused.
Yeah, I know they do.
Right, attachments. You can have attachments from human spirits as well as more malevolent ethereal beings and demons and so on. But I think when we were talking about, having to worry, everybody, you don't have to worry that when you're going to go out, you're going to get attacked. I made mention of the fact that I think it happens every single day. Yes, around the world. Yes, I'm sure somewhere it happens. But there's a lot of negative energy out there, and I think it affects us all differently. And I think in doing so, those of us who are aware will we'll ground ourselves. We'll pay attention to our space. I'll speak for myself. If I find myself getting really agitated about something more than usual, happens a lot. I got a lot going on, but if more than usual, if I find I'm really irritated or I'm short of patience, because I do have quite a bit of patience. If little things just don't add up, I stop, I take a breath, and I'm like, okay, something's going on. Sometimes, something just flings in and out because it's the field I work in. I work with people, I help people. Sometimes that bleeds through. Right?
Well, I've had to, you know what? I really believe this, that once you've dealt, especially with the negative, it doesn't forget you, because I've had drop-ins here. You know that. I've talked to you about it. Things have been here, and people don't, like, again, demons aren't hiding around every corner. But the problem is, and what really helped me years ago understand this, is learning about energy and being grounded. You were the one that said this to me, along with many other mentors I've worked with, that that's so important, to be grounded. And a lot of people, I would still say that a lot of people don't understand what grounding is. So maybe talk a little bit about that and why it's so important.
I think grounding is very important. I always explain it the easiest way where people understand it is if, for example, you're installing a light in your home. You have like this grounding wire that keeps you from getting zapped, right? It's safe. It grounds that energy, keeps it in one spot, right? Without taking off. The same thing is for us. We are essentially energy. We're energy. We're just walking around in this physical suit, but we are energy. You ever notice certain times of the year you were just pushing a shopping bug, you put your hand on it and you go, zzz, right? You get zapped. It's just, we're energy, and we are affected by other energies. And when you have energies that are not bound by the physical, that can roam around very easily, it's not hard for them to attach to another energy form. I think it's one of the reasons why spirits and other beings find it so easy to be able to manipulate the lights and appliances and televisions and so on. But by doing certain grounding techniques, and you ground yourself pretty much to the planet,
Mhm.
like you're grounding yourself or earthing, taking a walk bare feet. When I say hug a tree,
Yes.
right, hug a tree, it's not just a saying like, for the wild bohemian folk. No.
Children.
Right, exactly. No, it's a thing. And I love hugging trees because they willingly give of their energy. And they're very sentient. I mean, they communicate with each other via their root systems, and they will communicate with other energies if you just listen. I've often heard really gifted people say when they walk alone in the forest, it's like almost that they can hear the voices, they can hear the trees or other little beings speaking to them. So grounding is important. It makes it harder for things to attach.
Well, I was going to say too, that was the thing that stopped the physical attacks in my home. And even though my kids were younger and I had 3 people didn't understand maybe what energy was, once I did, to be able, I used to hate to hear it all the time, but it's so vitally important. You got to raise your vibration. I kept saying, what the heck does that mean? And then I realized when I understood it, like attracts like energy, and you got to be a match, kind of like a radio signal, right? And when you were we were talking a bit before the show, we really had some severe things in our previous home, and they did everything they could so that you stayed in that low vibrational energy. You're sad, you might be depressed, you're worried, they go out, and I've told people this so many times, they go after things that you really can't control. Your health, your money, your children, anything that is important to you, right? Because then when you're the low vibrational state, it's a match. It's easier for them to affect you. And what's your thoughts on that one?
I agree with you 100%. I think in working with as many people that I've worked with over the decades, it's kind of trying to figure out what came first, like the chicken and the egg thing. It's kind of like they amp up. If you have an addictive personality, they will amp it up. But spirits can do that as well. I've talked to people who move into a place and all of a sudden they start drinking and doing this and that, only to find out that the last homeowner, had passed away, was an alcoholic, for instance. So if that individual was a male, then the male of the house who just moved in seems to pick up on those characteristics. So it's just as easy with human spirits as it is with more malevolent beings. But, they will prey on people who have, mental health problems, maybe people who are grieving, maybe people who are just going through a really difficult time. And they will also create that. So you could move into that space and they can all of a sudden just manipulate you and you take that on. I have worked with, the one example I tend to use, there are many, but, they call the family that this was like the $1 million family, the husband, the wife, they're young, the son, the daughter, self-employed, the big house, the cars, the boats, the cottage, they had everything. And then all of a sudden, her mother passes away and she decides to use a pendulum to start communicating. It's a tool, right? I always say mindset, right? It's mindset, making that invitation, and everything within 3 months, everything went like down the toilet. It happened so fast. And she just totally lost control of everything. The marriage eventually split up and everything got sold and he ended up with, somebody else. And it happens that quick. She kept asking.
Sorry, go ahead, finish, sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say, she wanted her priest, but every time the priest tried to get in, she'd never answer the door. They just wouldn't let her. Like, it's just like a cycle, a continuous cycle that just kept happening.
Think I would be divorced had we not moved in that home. We were very happy in our first home together. We had my eldest, and his parents were getting older, and he's okay with me talking about this. I know he is. So he even signed a release when we were on the episode together.
Yeah.
They didn't end up involving him, but that's how I know he's very open to this. And when we moved into that home, my ex-husband, it was like he had a lobotomy. Like, he was always very introverted, but he moved in there and he went from being, a fun guy, had a great time, was really involved with our eldest. We moved into that home. I had a career-ending back injury by falling through a floor. I was a community visiting nurse, and I went in one door. It was a trailer park out rurally, and I went just for simple dressing. And I don't judge people's homes, but it was like a hoarder home. I didn't even know this, and I've lived in Thunder Bay my whole life, this trailer park existed way up almost outside of the city. Like, it was like an hour drive to get there. And it was winter. I used the side door, went in, just was going to be there for 5 minutes for a dressing to do on this poor man's leg. He was very nice. And I said, could I use your car, front door? I'm parked a little closer. Oh, by all means. And I worked for a nursing agency here in Canada called the Victorian Order of Nurses. So I always had this big, heavy bag with me because I never went to my office, right? I step out the front door and he had a big rug there. He had covered a hole in his front rug. I stepped out, went right through down to the ground through what stairs are like, right? Going down the front steps, and the disc in my back. My ex-husband was like, he was treated for clinical depression after he moved out. And I kept saying, you need to go. He was never depressed. He would come home and he'd go in the bedroom, shut the door for 2 hours. He couldn't talk to anybody. And all he did was sit on the couch. He wouldn't talk to anybody. This went on for like 12 years with him.
Wow.
Yeah. And I kept begging him to go get help. He's got 3 professional designations, he'd always make the short list for really great jobs, never be able to get the job. Minute he leaves the home, he's making 10 times the salary he ever did. Like, I know he was affected by what the energy was in that home. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I'm never surprised by the stories that I hear from people. It's the same MO, for the 2+ decades I've done this. It's the same MO, and it's a matter of realizing that people don't know that. I say, well, what's changed in your life? All of a sudden, everything's good. I mean, don't get me wrong. They have, what people have called
everything
themselves.
Went to heck, just like you told that story.
Just like that. Yeah. And that happens. And try to say, well, what changed? I've just been like, I don't do many of these anymore. I don't go, everything is done remotely. And even that, I am very, my schedule doesn't allow me to do as many as I used to. Right. And when you're doing them on your own, it's very, you want to be thorough, right? Mm-hmm. It's that simple. Even when I used to do them in person, it would take me months because I wanted to make sure that I was educating people while I was working with them. But again, it's the same story. I want to say, well, what has changed? If you've never had a problem before, what has changed in your life? And
I almost died. They couldn't find out what was wrong with me. I ended up 2 weeks here in hospital and 4 weeks in Toronto. They finally took my gallbladder out because they didn't know what was wrong with me. I couldn't eat. Wow. I was in end-stage parenteral nutrition that they put people dying on. I had my second son that had autism. Now, that can happen anytime, but it was everything just seemed to go to crap.
All at once. Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, and a lot of times that happens. And in talking to people, how many times have even you talked to somebody and you said, well, what happened? Well, I played with a Ouija board when I was this age. And I'll say, and they'll be just like, but I was this age. And I'm just like, wow.
We did. I remember the one time we went to friends of my parents. It was their daughter. She was 3 or 4 years older. We didn't even know what it was. It was my brother and I. I think we were about 8 and 9. And did that. But I've always had weird, strange stuff. I've told you some of the stuff around waking up, being choked. Yeah. It was before the Ouija board. So was it around me? Is it in my family? Like, I don't know.
I always think it's more about the invitation. I mean, a lot of people, I look at the board as a tool. There are a lot of tools that you can use, right? I mean, it's another, like a pendulum. I mean, there's, anything when you're putting out the invitation to communicate, you're putting it out there. It doesn't matter what you're using. I mean, you can just sit there and ponder by yourself, get into, be in the right place, wrong times, or whatever the case may be. It is a careful what you wish for thing. You just don't know. But usually what I hear from people is that they knew something changed back then and something came in. But unfortunately, they said, well, but most of my life, there was nothing there. I said, well, it's very possible it didn't follow. It's possible it just stayed dormant. I mean,
I think they wait for the perfect time, like
yeah.
it's almost the perfect storm, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, they're not bound by time or physical places. They can wait you out. Believe me. I mean, I've worked with people who had one of these entities in their lives, in their younger years, and then things go really quiet, and then all of a sudden, this like they're certain that it's the same one. They're certain. There's like the characteristics are the same, and like just mediums have come in, and most people when they come to me, they've been through different avenues. They have worked their way up, and around and trying to figure out the best people within their community or close enough to them to help them. I've worked with so many paranormal researchers who say, look, you know what, we're researchers. We don't do this stuff, and we care not to. And they'll ask if I will come in and assist. I'm like, sure, I'm always happy to work with other groups, but again, a lot of it is just, there's not a lot of people that want to do it, that can do it, or they will refer people to deliverance ministers, or, say work with, your faith, and maybe they can direct you to work with somebody else that they're familiar with. I mean, there's a whole network of really incredible people out there.
You're very gifted, though, and you've helped
thank you.
many people. Because
thank you.
I remember telling you when I moved, that it had never been dealt with. Like, we just ended up leaving, left everything, and I'm not sorry to see the end of that house. I don't miss it. I'm glad we're out of there. I don't miss it at all. And I even with my son dying this year, again, you're very sad, and I think in a way it's a bit of a gift, because I truly believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that we're going to see our loved ones when we go back home ourselves, right? But you can see and you hear many stories, like what you said a few minutes ago. Somebody experiences a death in the family, and it's brief, no timetable. It's a personal experience, but especially I find when it's really unexpected, but not even always, but if it's unexpected and they're missing this person so much, I can't tell you, even myself, how many people thinking, maybe I'll try, a Ouija board. It could be a spirit box, anything, right? And people don't think about this. And I always say I don't say it much on air, but if I'm working with people, you're a one tiny puny little human. These things have been around for so long, they can mimic your loved one's voice. Say you're using a spirit box or whatever, right? You have to be so careful.
I've seen some very gifted people run into some, problems. I think you're dealing with some of these things are ancient, and some of them are relatively, you get human spirits or been, not so much on the ancient scale, but they've obviously are strong enough with energy to be able to, get the point across. I've seen human spirits do, hauntings, just crazy stuff. But I feel that it's important for people just to be aware of their space. I believe most people are gifted, even if it's just a hair on the back of your neck going up, the butterflies in your stomach. It's just your, it's your body's way of saying, look at, just pay attention. There's something out of the norm here. And that's it. I mean, I grew up, having a lot of malevolent experiences, and pretty much long before there were, TV shows and things like that. So I learned early on that my mindset was very important, that if I behaved a certain way and I just didn't feed into it, and tried to stay as positive as possible, then things just seemed to change. The whole theory of, they feed off the negative energy, which is why they project so much negative energy, why they keep your life in an upheaval. Again, spirit or non-spirit, human spirit, I think they learned pretty quick how to do things. And I've worked with enough people, and I've worked with professional people. I've had rabbis
Well, I would consider
work with me. I've had priests work
I
with
would
me.
consider you a professional. I would. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, thank you. But no, I'm small potatoes, compared to some of the people out there. Like I
don't think so.
having a conversation. Oh, thank you. That's why I love you.
I love you too.
Yeah. I found it so interesting for me, like learning about the different faiths and how they handle things. And I worked with one family who had things going on, and it was so fascinating to me because the rabbi, the family said, "Could our rabbi be here during, this experience and the investigation?" I said, "Yes, of course." And I don't know who learned more. He was fascinated by the technique of the investigation. I was fascinated because they have their own way of doing things. And he was an older rabbi, so you get into the whole Dybbuk boxes and things like that. And he would explain how they deal with things. And it was just interesting. We both just sat there so intrigued with the other, but I learned a lot from him. I've had, Catholic priests, I've had non-denominational priests, Protestant, Lutheran, deliverance ministers, Christians. They're all versed within their own faith. But if you cannot connect with the faith of the individual you're there helping, that's half the battle, is getting them to giving them back their faith, wherever that may be. If they don't believe in anything, then something is going to make them feel empowered. And that's what you need to try to work with. You can't just, put your belief system onto somebody. Well, this is the way it is. No, it's not the way it is, because it's different for every person. Every person is different.
But you need the people to participate too, in the 100%. If that makes sense.
They have to have some kind of control. You have to help them find a way to get their control back. I can't just wave a magic wand and say, "Here's your control," or I can't just force them to say, "You need to get control." I think that's hard sometimes when you just say, "You need to do this." Even so, there has to be a way, where that person has to want to, because the investigator, they get to go home.
Yeah.
That person stays behind, or these families stays behind, and they have to feel confident enough for when you're not there to be able to take back their space.
I used to always say that there was a fine line in the beginning of all this between fear and feeling empowered. Once you start to learn about these things, like it was like, I swear to God, I don't sleep a lot. It became like a 20-hour a day job, and it started locally, provincially, country-wise, then went continents all around the world trying to find some answers. And I learned a lot, and that's what's empowering once you understand, right? Knowledge is empowering, and that's why it's so important. And exactly what you said, you can't wave a magic wand, because I have run into a few cases where the person, it becomes their story, and even though it's scary for them, they really don't quite want to get rid of it. Like, you can feel it from the things they're saying, right? And I've run into that too. Have you found that with any people in cases you've worked with? Because it's hard to help someone like that if they're not fully invested, right?
I think so. I think what happens, from how people have explained it to me after everything has said and done, and they've been cleared or they've moved, whatever the case may be, they're like, "I felt this need. I felt so attached, just as attached to it as it was to me. It made me feel like I had, like, special. It made me feel like I had these abilities. It made me feel, and they said that when they complied, things got easier. The activity relaxed. But when they fought back, the activity would amp up." Well, of course, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. I mean, but the fact that they were very aware of that when they were outside of the situation, I think you get a lot more information from people when they're away from the situation, because then they speak freely, and they can say, "This is how I felt the whole time, that I felt like, like I was with an abusive spouse." It just felt very, very
And
oppressive.
Stockholm syndrome from their part too,
Yes.
right? Like
Yeah.
I don't want this, but like you said, yeah,
Mhm.
I've met people like that too, right?
Yes.
It's a whole, we don't talk about this enough. That's why I'm so glad that we're doing part 2 here.
Mm.
And the one thing I've never asked you about, but I want to know more about it, is gin. Now, I know I had a doctor that was from Pakistan, and she was amazing. And when I was going through some of this stuff, I never told her. And finally, one night, because I could only see her in the evenings, and I went in and I let her know, and she said to me, "Lorilei, why did you not tell me this?" I said, because I didn't want you to 5150 me and lock me, send me to the psych ward.
Yeah.
And she started talking to me. She kept saying, in my country, like she said, I remember as a little kid, there were all these pillows flying around the room and all this stuff. And she said, we ended up having to use, I think it was his Islamic prayers and songs. And she said, but we call them jinn. You might call them a genie. And she said, some are good and some are negative. And I'm just asking curiously, have you ever run into a jinn at all or had to deal with it?
No, amazingly, I have not. And don't ask me how, because
Yeah.
I have worked with people from all walks of life, from many different parts of the world. I have worked with, people from, like, the Muslim community, and they're very, like, I mean, one woman that I worked with, her husband was Muslim, and he goes, "Oh, like, I'm just curious to see if it's a jinn." Like,
Yeah.
were very, they're very common out in, a lot of the Middle Eastern countries. And I was just like, wow. But it didn't feel like that. So again, we brought in other mediums,
Hmm.
and there's never anything they picked up on, not the same characteristics. They didn't have any specific, some people say, well, they smell a lot of smoke because, they're like smoke type beings.
I've seen
Um,
it live in the Middle East.
mm,
And
yeah.
I don't, this was before AI, and I was blown away with what I was seeing. And it was a couple different videos. This guy would go to places, he didn't speak English, and so he would be repeating the prayers. And the one I saw, it blew my mind. It looked like a shadow, like the Hat Man without the hat. And,
Mm,
and then it would just evaporate into smoke, and it was crazy. So my
yeah.
thoughts on that are, because I've always wondered about this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you noticed geographically, including religions, that they seem to have more, like over in the Middle East, a jinn? Over in Asia, they've got like always. It seems like they've got the girl from The Ring. It
Mm,
shows up, like whether it's on camera or what. Like, so do you
mm,
think it's more a belief system or a collective of the energy and belief that creates that, depending on where you live? Like, it doesn't always happen, but you do
mhm.
sometimes see that.
I have to tell you that, I'm a big believer, and I talk a lot about mindset, frame of
Okay.
mind, intention. It's really big, and I think if you have a very strong belief system, I mean, you look at, it will, if you have a really strong belief system, I think anything, you can do anything,
True. Hmm.
right? You can manifest. Apparently, you can manifest your own reality. You can do all
Hmm.
kinds of things. So I know people of faith.
Hmm.
Some people are much stronger in faith than others. Some people are called extremists.
Yeah.
Some people are just, you come from really, really war torn countries. That you're going through a lot, and a lot of these countries, these Middle Eastern countries, man, they've just been to hell and back and some.
Couldn't imagine. Not.
I know, right? So,
Mhm.
but I think that's going to, do you lose faith? Do you have stronger faith? Is there more rage, anger, fear? If you're having these emotions that are easy to feed from, going, if that is indeed the case, which it is strongly believed that it is, then they're going to generate that. And people in these situations are going to be more affected than others. And if the belief system is, well, no, we believe in jinn, then
Yeah.
I think that's, I guess the key is it being manifested, or is it really something? There's really, I mean, the whole world is ancient, right? But when you're getting into some of these really ancient civilizations, you know, and these cultures that are built on, like, for example, I'll back up. You go to Europe. You have cities built on top of cities, on top of cities, right? And they're still finding ways. Like people are moving into a house and they go into their basement and they find, a door and a tunnel going into humongous cave systems. I mean, this is happening everywhere, right? So I think that there's so much history that anything is possible with respects to what you're going to be able to manifest, or what your belief system is going to be. You look at some of the indigenous people all over the world, right? All of their oral history, and they have really interesting tales as well. They all have different names for it. Some people have it, some people just apply it differently, I think. I've talked to so many indigenous people who are just, talk to Don Yazzie. He'll tell you all kinds of crazy stories.
I need to get a hold of those
guys. I'll connect you up if you haven't yet. I will. He's wonderful.
Because I was thinking as you were talking to, I believe that, being spirit in any way, whether good or bad or what, right? We're not constrained by a body. We're energy. So I'm also thinking, I'm wondering if, say, you're in the Middle East, and that's what, if you're going to have paranormal activity, and I've seen so many shows now, I'm not saying everybody, but it could be a jinn. Could the spirit possibly manifest in that form, right? Because they know what kind of emotions it's going to elicit in the people that it's stealing their energy and creating havoc, for lack of better phrases, right? I wonder if that's why. Because I've seen this and I keep wondering why, because I don't think it's a tulpa. Like you look at cases and people are like, they've got documentation and stuff, and it, you see this, or like I said on the live, he kept calling it a jinn, and you would see it looking like a shadow, and then as he get close,
it's smoke,
evaporate.
Yeah.
Smoke.
It's smoky. I don't know. I totally, I totally think that anything is possible. I do. And again, after dealing with, hundreds, thousands of people that I've communicated with, over the years, when you're hearing the same sort of feedback and the same sort of stories, and you're talking to people and asking them about, how do you feel? Why do you think this has happened to you? When did this change? How did you feel after the fact? What was it like before? And they're like, well, I had a complete lack of energy. I was always mad. I was always sad. I was always, then you get rid of them, you help get them out of the situation, you clear the place, and then they start to take this breath of fresh air, and you get the old term, it just seemed lighter in here.
It does.
Lighter, brighter. Whereas when you have this oppression, it's like that, well, it was darker than dark. How many times you hear that expression? There's a lot of things that lead us to behave the way that we behave. But when there's something that's sort of, the puppet master and pulling some of the strings, and you don't realize what's happening, it's one thing. But when you start to get the hint that there's something going on, if you become so used to it, because sometimes it's not that quick. Sometimes it's so gradual that you don't see it happening. And next thing you know, you're in the full throes of it. And then it's just become so habitual, right?
Yeah, because ours started out small. Like, you keep your keys at the front door, you're ready to go out in the old house. And you see your keys sitting there, you've been down to put your shoes on, the keys are gone. And you think you're going crazy. You tear the house, you can't find them. I guess I'm not going out.
That's the idea, though. You think you're going crazy. Is that the idea?
But then you go back 2 hours later to pick up the mail, and there's your keys. Exactly. That's what it is. It makes you feel like you're crazy.
Yeah, I know. But I think it's just a lot of it's just to make you question yourself. The idea is to make you lose, faith, to make you feel like you've been abandoned by your creator, or been abandoned by, whatever your faith.
With your spouse or whoever, like my first husband, like, what did you do with the keys? I didn't do anything with the keys.
Yeah.
The keys were just here. They're gone. Like, how they don't just disappear. And that creates discord. And I can see it happening.
Yeah.
And Absolutely. Like, and then when it really ramps up, it seemed like then it just ramped up. It was
Mhm.
insane.
Yeah.
There was something else I was just going to ask you. That's what it was. So, just in your opinion, where do you think demons come from? Because, and I'm not meaning to offend anybody in any way, or say anything against anybody's beliefs, but I'm a retired Catholic. As I say, I was forced to go to church practically from being in the womb, Catholic school, and now that I know, I don't believe there is a hell, but there's something where
Mm.
these things come from. So what's your thoughts on that?
That's a really loaded question.
I know. Well, we'll be careful about it.
It's a loaded question because there's so much again conditioning
Mhm.
through religion and so on, and society and films, movies, things like that. The theory is, I mean, through Catholicism, is that they're fallen angels. Well, if you look
That's
at
what
that,
mine was, apparently. One of the first 40 fallen
yeah,
angels. I never found it till I had this dream. And then people tell me, demons don't tell you your name or how to spell. Well, I'm telling you, whatever I was told in this dream told me its name. I'd never heard it before.
Mhm.
Spelt it for me mockingly. I looked everywhere, couldn't find it. 5 years later, I was helping somebody else with paranormal activity, and they asked me to look something up. And I said, well, this isn't my field of expertise because I don't work with dark things. And I found everything I had been told in this dream. It's like it happened 10 minutes ago, not 17, 18 years ago. And it said it was one of the first 40 fallen. So
there you go. So, I mean, you start getting into some of that stuff, and then you start asking yourself, why would one of the big, these big
why?
fallen, when there's so many little lesser ones running around? But it happens. It happens. I don't know. I'm
just picking.
I've researched different religions, and they all have their different opinions. I'm a big believer in archons, that have never been here. I totally think that they can manipulate everything from without being even within the immediate space. I think there are lesser entities that come within our realms. Are they dimensional? Sure. Do I believe heaven and hell are dimensional? Hell, I tend to believe that way a little bit. I don't believe up or down. I do believe it's just a dimensional
I think
thing.
it's the way I asked it. You're right. I think they come from a dimension
Yeah.
that is it's awful. You don't want to go there. So I think it's semantics on what you're going to call it. Then how about that instead of saying there isn't? Because I would never tell somebody or argue with them. I believed it. I just know from wherever they come from, it's not a pleasant place to be. So we can call it hell for lack of a better word. But how, you just wonder, how did they get created? Or the watchers or things like that you hear about, right?
Well, if you're looking at the fact that there is a creator, there is a creator. So I imagine the creator creates, right? You're looking at Carrie Lynn, hello. I don't know. It's just one of those age-old questions. We know that they're not human. They've never been human. We know that they have seem to have this agenda with attaching or oppressing humans. Is it because the energy is food for them? It is with the archons. It is with many of
So
these
what's the
different types
difference
of
between
buildings.
an archon and a demon?
I don't know that there's any real difference. Archon is more
Semantics.
from the Gnostic texts, and they were, if you're getting into looking up Gnosticism, and you have the goddess Sophia who created, her creation, who went on because he was an abomination, essentially, and created his own. Hence these archons. Some people are like, oh, they're extraterrestrials. Other people are like, no, they're the demons that feed off of us. It really depends on where your faith is. I look at them as I have no specific faith. I'm spiritual. I believe in creators. The creator, I believe that there's something more out there, that we are miracles essentially as individuals. I mean, we're here, we're energy, we evolve, we have the capability to evolve. I think we're sort of a species with amnesia. I believe that, we are much more, there's much more to us than we even think
Is possible.
ourselves. I believe a lot of our conditioning has been purposely done to make us forget who we have. And I've heard this upteen amounts of times by many different people. So if you're looking at that, do you just look at these other beings, whether they're demonics, whether they're jinn, whatever the case may be, because there's all kinds of them. They same beings, different names. Who knows? It's again, it's a loaded question because it can go in so many different directions.
I didn't mean to make it loaded, but I thought I'm going to ask you because I'd never asked you some of these questions before. Yeah. We do have a few. Well, maybe what we'll do our station ID, and then I have some starred questions. This just flew by this first hour.
It did. Yeah. So you're having fun.
So if you're just tuning in, you're listening to UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio Network, or you're watching us. This is the Angel Rock. I'm Lorilei Potvin, and I have our fellow UPRN host. And I think at the beginning, I forgot to mention your shows. She's also our network manager, the wonderful and amazing Michelle Desrochers. She has her, I don't want to say bigger show, your night show on Wednesdays and Thursday evenings called The Outer Realm at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then on Tuesdays, 2:30 to 4 p.m. Eastern, you have
2 to 3:30.
I really screwed that up. I'm sorry. Good thing she's here. 2 to 3:30 Beyond the Outer Realm. And we are it's kind of part 2 that we started on the Outer Realm. I was so grateful that you had me on. I've been on your show before, but I had fun with you October the 1st. And we said, let's continue part 2, talking about exorcisms and demons and attachments and infestations and things like that. So, picking up from there, and then we'll get to the questions. So what's the difference for people that don't know the difference, say, between an attachment and a possession and an infestation, even in your own words and your thoughts and experiences?
Well, just in my research and just talking to people who do deliverances, people who do exorcisms and so on and so forth, there's a very strong belief that full possession, is very rare. A lot of people, everybody's got their own opinion, and you're all entitled to it. I try to be more. I try to be very open-minded about it. I am not an expert in any of it, and I know that there are many. If you look at the Catholic Church, many exorcists. It doesn't mean they're all performing exorcisms. It's also their job to go in and, assess. I mean, I know people who do this, right? And they have to assess. There's so much involved in that.
It is.
And,
I was just thinking that.
There are different cultures all over the world. Some are more apt than others. And I'm sure there's some that we will never hear about because they are in third world countries, and do I believe that we're in a time where maybe more of it is happening? Yes. I do believe we're in a time when more of it is happening. There's just a lot of, like I said, you just go into the Middle East. There's so much going on out there. There's war. There's people are feeling vulnerable. Do you have to be scared to go out every day? No, you do not. That is not what I'm saying. So I think, don't take it so literal. But I do think that it's been happening for a really long time. Attachments, it could be anything. It could be a spirit. It could be a demon. You could pick something up anywhere. Do I think they're common? I think they're more common than possession. Oppression on another thing. That's a whole other thing.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute then, oppression.
Well, a lot of people live in an oppressed state. You can live in an oppressed state just from a human spirit as well. Something comes in and you feel like you have no motivation. You feel like there's some things going on within your space. You're not alone. Always that feeling of being watched. There's little things that might be happening. And this is what tends to amp things up. But this is something, again, that is not uncommon. People who, they'll tell you that's one of the first stages, of having your having something come in, possession, infestation. That's just the way it is. So if you're getting into, I don't know why they always say a demonic or why it has to be a demonic oppression, but I mean, everybody, the D word seems to be something that seems to really fly a lot, and it's one of the reasons that I try to be very careful in my speaking of it. But if you're getting into a demonic oppression, it's usually when a malevolent entity of some sort comes into your thoughts, your emotions, affects your actions, and you feel like this sense of heaviness, But when you start getting into things that are a little bit more, this starts to amp up a little bit, then you start seeing your own behavior changing, like they influence you, right? It can lead to people basically having feelings of hopelessness, or they just feel angry all the time. That's probably the most common. That's like the most common, I think, thing out there. As far as what it leads to, I guess it depends on whether you get help or not.
So almost, so like a personality shift is what you're saying.
Big one. Yeah. Infestation is when things tend to amp up a little bit, like you'll get like, the scratching on the walls, things like that. Any people that I've worked with who are much more involved in this stuff than I am, that's what I'll tell you, they call it, when all hell breaks loose within the space, that you've been in an oppressed state, because you can be in an oppressed state for years and not know it. And then getting into the infestations and things really start to amp up. But there's not always that waiting period. I mean, sometimes you pick something up and you end up in, like you say, look at how fast it happened for you. I look at how fast it happened for people that I've worked with, families that I've worked with are just like, it was okay, a week ago, and all of a sudden all this stuff started happening. And it was almost like it was happening overnight. Like there's no rhyme or reason for it. We can all sit there and think we know exactly what the lay of the land is. We can come out here and project it to the world. And this is what it is. And this is what we think it is. You know what? You don't really know.
You don't.
There are people who there are people who do this like on a more regular basis. You don't really know. We can make all the assumptions we want.
I was just going to say, and as soon as you're in that position and you think you know it all, guess what? The universe presents something new.
It is. It's always easy to take what somebody else says and says, well, I don't agree with this. Or, oh, hey, I do agree with this. Or, hey, maybe it was this. Maybe it was this. I'm very objective, and I'm not the word. Right.
I think you have to be effective, especially with the cases that you have helped people with, because you know what, you can't just go in with your mind all made up, right? Like you said, you've got to be, your stuff. I know you know your stuff. You're an incredible researcher. And it's just that you have to be open-minded. And again, before the break, we were talking about that. You've got to be able to empower, like you said, the people you're working with, because you can't be there all the time either, right? You've got to start giving people tools how to get better.
Home. You go home. What do you do when you go into somebody's home and go in and start making demands? I command you to show yourself. I demand you to do this. I mean, who are we to command or demand anything, really? You get to go home, and you know who gets stuck picking up the pieces? The family.
I've been there. I have been there. Yeah. We had somebody locally come in. It was recommended through a friend, and I trusted this friend, and I'm so grateful she suggested this person. But I met them on the front doorstep. They would be, and I say this very kindly, very woo-woo, like very living sort of in the higher astral, plane and realms. And we need people of all different walks of life. And I realized I had known this person's mom, and I guess their mom had passed away in the last 6 months. I had worked with their mom. She was a secretary. But the thing is, they told me on my front steps that their guides told them to be prepared for the fight of their life. And I'm telling you, I wish to God I had filmed it. I'm not making this up. Like, it was a beautiful, sunny, warm day. She went and did the upstairs, and she walked past my late son's room in the previous home, and she goes, "Oh, I don't like what's in there." And I watched her when she went in there, and she was not theatrical in any way, shape, or form. Passed out, had tears streaming down her eyes, and she did the best that she could. She tried to help us, and she came twice, but it just made things worse. Like, it locked it almost in.
It can get worse before it gets better. I think, the easiest way to answer the question is, oppression is things that go on the outside. Possession is when you have a demonic entity or ethereal being, when it decides to take the physical from you. And when it takes a physical from you and decide that it's taking ownership, that's when it's really serious. Speaking in tongues and the whole 9 yards, all kinds of things. So I think that's the easiest way to break it up. But when people come in and you're going through this stuff, the infestation point, what I think is where you guys are at with all of this stuff.
We heard that lots. I heard that from many mediums and psychics.
Yeah.
They said you have an infestation. They kept saying they tried to close portals, like they tried everything, and nothing worked.
Yeah, and sometimes it does get worse before it gets better. I've showed people how to help themselves and clear their own places and so on, and because, like I say, one day the people who come to help you aren't going to necessarily be there, whether they move, whether they pass away, whether they just get out of the business. It's good to empower somebody and give them the tools to try to do it themselves, because it gives control back to that individual. And, in doing that, it makes all the difference in the world. But I've had more people say to me, the more they did it, the worse things got. And then all of a sudden they just stayed their ground, and they just kept the fear at bay, and they started feeling empowered, because if they're doing it themselves, you're putting them back in control. And it's always under the pretense of, I always say, if you feel at any point that you're in danger, and this is just helping people because I couldn't get to them, and they had nobody within their community that could help them. Yeah, right. There's nobody, but they persevered, and they just said, you know what? They got stronger and said, no, darn it, I've had enough. I'm taking control. I'm in charge. And then all of a sudden, it just started. It's not something waving a magic wand. It's a lifestyle change. I mean, they were doing it almost every day, the whole process of the clearing and working on that intention and putting that power behind everything that they were doing, and whether it's intention and the act of the clearing. And, it makes a huge difference, and it worked for them.
It absolutely is important. Plus, I think that, like, if I run into something negative, like, I've helped people now that I know what I know, but if it's something that I haven't dealt with, or it's really dark, that's not something I do. And I always use this analogy when I'm on this show or as a guest or anything. It's like, say you had a major leak in your bathroom. Could you watch YouTube videos to kind of get you through it? Yes. But if you could, you should have somebody like that's a professional come in and fix it properly, because they do it every day, or this is their field of expertise. And that's what I feel is most important when we're dealing with this. The other thing I usually ask people on the questionnaire that I do with them is, do you have small children and or pets? And if so, what's their behavior been like? What are you seeing with them? And what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think animals are highly intuitive. They're able to pick up on things immediately. Oh, the plumbing. Yeah. The plumbing. Yeah. And children are little mini psychics. I mean, they're just they're so gifted. I think that they stop being gifted. It's normally because we have, as parents, maybe have discouraged them by saying, you know what, like, don't be silly. You don't have an imaginary friend.
Yeah.
Like, if
Mhm.
kids feel silly, they'll stop talking. Or if they're
Absolutely.
scolded for you're being stupid, they'll stop talking. And I think it's often when they get victimized, like they're the most vulnerable because parents don't always believe them. So what do?
Mhm.
You sort of befriend the child. I've seen it so many times. Or you put fear into the child and the parents start saying, okay, this is ridiculous. And then they wait till that there's no more confidence. And then that child breaks down, makes the invite and says, I'm your imaginary friend. I want to come play with you. Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
But one thing that I've often heard parents say is that I saw my child slowly start to withdraw,
Mhm.
didn't want to go outside anymore, didn't want to be by himself anymore, wanted to sleep with us, was having nightmares. It was an escalation.
Yeah.
So that seems to be, the way it happens. And I hear that often, time after time after time.
Oh no,
Right?
I agree with you. Or, like you said, the nightmares, even night terrors. Not all night terrors are caused by this, but
Yeah.
especially if the child's never have had them, you're seeing all these other things hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
You need to look at it and listen. And I agree too, because I believe we all as children were very, very intuitive. I always say their work is play, right?
Yeah.
Especially younger children. They live in the world of now, joy. Not every child has a joyful life. That's not what I'm saying, but
No.
that's a natural perpetuity, if you will, of a young child, I believe. And the same as your pets too, right?
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
It's one of the things I always tell people. It's just if you have a pet, follow their lead. The animal will react,
Mhm.
especially if they're trying to protect their family. And children listen when they speak, because if you don't, they will withdraw. And then that sets precedence moving forward. I've talked to adults that said, "Oh no, my parents, I couldn't talk about this when I was young, so I just withdrew. I never."
I couldn't. And I've had
Right.
right
Yeah.
back, I'm 60. I remember I was
Yeah.
between 3 and 4.
Yeah.
My paranormal experiences as a small child, and then same thing. The people, and I guess I did have imaginary friends, because you'd be in bed and I remember talking to, it was my main guide, and
Yeah.
I'm a night owl, still am to this day, so I didn't want to go
Yeah.
to bed at
Same.
8 o'clock at night. So, and I knew if I got out of bed my butt would be tanned, so I'd end up just
Mm.
sitting and having conversations with my imaginary friend, right?
Yes, exactly. So eventually you do, and you communicate, and it can end up causing, you know,
Mhm.
bringing things in, because the child feels that if they're being bullied by whatever is there, a
Mhm.
stronger presence, that will be it.
I think people are
So
talking about they're hearing an EVP in here. I'm gonna have to go back and check, but I'm hearing this through the chat, or looking through the chat.
I heard a vehicle go by earlier.
Yeah, somebody said that aloud. It was a loud car or something.
Yeah,
It might have been. I have my window open, you guys. If you are, I didn't even think of it, but I do.
yeah.
So that's probably what it
Mine
is.
are mine are closed, but I did hear the sound. It was a very loud. Sounded like a vehicle that went by.
I probably didn't even pay attention to
No,
it.
I know. You get used to it, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's hot. It's humid in here. We've had some rain, even though it's cool outside. So we have a few questions.
Mhm.
They're from Mish. She said, "When we choose to come to Earth, would sorry, I got to look up here. I don't have my glasses on.
Mm.
Would we choose to add these attachments to create the stuff we want to go through?" Well, it's a good question.
Yeah, it is. No, I just saw the word of choice. I'm like,
I said,
yeah.
yeah. Normally, if I wasn't on air, Mish, you're darn right I'd say that word.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah.
Hmm. So they're wondering, what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you think, if you're talking about, and if someone believes that, and I do, that we have a reason why we're here. Is our whole life planned? No, but I believe that, we have some things we're hoping to accomplish when we come here. Um, I think that's what Misha was asking. Could we possibly build that in?
I'll give you the side to both coins. I mean, I think because there is a theory that we have a great degree of control over our lives and how we plan them. and coming here. If that is indeed a thing, then sure. But I also, on the other side of the coin, think that there are things there that are here to hinder that path.
Oh, that's a good way to look at that.
Maybe to derail you for a little while or take you off your path. Maybe that's part of the lesson, or maybe it's just bad luck, and you end up just picking something up, and that's the way it goes. I mean, some people live their whole lives never having any experiences. That's it. They don't have any experiences, and if they had one, they wouldn't even recognize it.
I think I was meant to have this experience that I did in my previous home, because my plan was going to be, I was going back to school and become a doctor eventually. I never thought I'd be doing what I'm doing now. And nor would I, if someone had told me the story that we had lived through back then, I don't think I would have believed it. Right. And through those experiences, I'm doing what I'm doing today now. And I absolutely love it. Wouldn't change a thing. So I don't think I built it in.
Yeah.
But I think it's also about perception when you look at what happens in your life too, right?
Yeah. And I think you have to look at the fact that everything connects.
Yeah.
Sometimes things aren't attachments. They're just there presenting themselves. Maybe they're trying to get your attention to something. And once you give your attention to it and you address it, maybe it's a situation. Maybe it's not always necessarily, something that's not always just about attaching to you. Maybe there's just something you're supposed to do that you've not been paying attention to. Like I say, the universe likes to push and trying to get you to change gears, and they make it harder and harder. And then, you get that little nudge and you decide to switch gears, and all of a sudden things get easier. It's not attachment. It's just
and they did
back onto your path, right? Yeah, exactly. So
they did. And also, like I say, never in a million years would I ever have thought I'd be doing what I'm doing today. And I'm busier than when I was working as a nurse. Love what I'm doing. Yeah. Wake up because every day is different too, right? That's part of it. I think it's about perception. And then, with knowledge, I think people can become empowered. And, watching shows like this, people learn more and more. And people are fascinated by this topic, as you well know, because all they see is what they see on TV a lot of the times too, right? Not everything's a demon.
No. Oh God, no. God, no. TV will do that. TV will do that because that's what sells. But I mean, it's no, there's different things there.
What was I going to say? Sorry, I wanted to highlight this. So actually, this is an interesting question from Mish too. She says, wonder if Eve from the Adam and Eve story had an attachment to eat the apple. And again, I'm just going to put it out there, and we don't have to, I know there's no wrong or right answer, but it's an interesting way of trying to make sense of this, right?
What if the apple wasn't an apple? What if the apple was just getting into learning about knowledge and being disobedient? The tree of knowledge.
Again,
the tree of knowledge.
Perception, right? Yeah. How you look at it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I love it. That's true.
Yeah, then I seen later on Mish said that she was going to come back as an attachment next time. I thought that was funny. And Wayne did say a little bit earlier, he says, I think that some of these guides, as well as darker things, may well be with you throughout many lifetimes. They may be connected to your essence.
It could be balance. Light and darkness. I mean, you have to have a balance. It's like when you're doing energy work, you have to understand. And I think in order to be a very good energy worker, you have to understand shadow work as much as you do light work. It's all beneficial.
Yeah, but you can't have one without the other on this planet, 100%. Right? You got to have, you've got one, you've got the other. So, sorry, Carrie, that's interesting. Carrie says, I don't think it was an apple, but technology that Adam and Eve were using.
Knowledge.
You just never know.
It's kind of like now, there are things out there that are on a need to know basis. And there are certain upper crust of society that seems to think that we don't need to know. So if you had something to present yourself, would you take a little bite and try to explore it? I don't know, right?
It could be your personality too,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
if somebody, we've all met people that if somebody dares them to do something, in spite of what it is, they'll do it. Or if you're told no, well, watch me. Hold my beverage as I do it.
Exactly. There we go. See, it's perfect.
Well, there are, like I say, it's all about perception and the way people look at things. And so the other thing, we got into your show, but again, we talked about the attachments, and some people don't even know that they might have an attachment. And then I love what you said tonight too. You had said, you don't have to be walking around in fear, worrying about it. But I remember it was one of the questions that was asked on your show when we did your show. People were asking, well, how can I avoid getting an attachment? So
I think attachment or not, you, like I say, some people go their entire lives, it's never a thing. I think it's how you look at an attachment. If you're looking at attachment as a being that comes into your space, are they trying to get your attention for something? Or are we looking at something that's more malevolent that decides I'm going to stay in your space, essentially, and just create some havoc? Maybe it's an energy thing. How do you avoid it? Just don't be food.
That's a good answer.
That's it's the only one I got.
No, but it's
seriously,
again, grounding. And then I have yet to meet a person that doesn't need some type of healing, like whether, like you mentioned, shadow work, or, maybe there's people that have had trauma in their lives, or, and I always say, you can't be on the outside looking in and say, why you went through that. That's nothing. You should have seen what I went through. It doesn't matter because it's traumatic for the person. So, we can always work on ourselves is what I'm saying, basically. Right. And
there's always room for growth. I really feel that we are here on a journey of evolution, which is growth, and don't be food. What I mean by that is, and this is what I have worked with people on, if you're feeling depressed, then depression is a real thing. So just try to make it easier on yourself and open some windows. Watch a funny movie, listen to some great music, listen to some binaural beats, dance, be silly, whatever it takes to make you feel good. If it makes you good to do something good for somebody else, then do something for somebody else. Just be kind, just be, whatever the case may be, positive vibrations is going to starve whatever it is that is trying to feed off of you, if that is what the case is. So if you're going to sit there and be negative, and if you feel, like everybody will say, oh yeah, just fire it right back out at them. Well, how does that work for you? It just doesn't always work out that good. Kill the old term, sometimes killing them with kindness is sometimes there's more hidden meanings behind things like that. There's just a lot of beings out there. I'm not saying just demonic beings. There are a lot of beings out there, including human spirits who may be trapped. And that energy, if they can fudge around, with your electricity and things like that and the lights, and I mean, obviously that energy needs to come from somewhere. And some people truly believe that even a human spirit will take energy from you. And it's an age-old thing. It's an absolute thing. So just high vibes. High vibes, man.
A human spirit. But you know what? We have human beings that, are energy vampires, if you will. Some willingly, some just that type. I like the neighbors in my old place I lived next to. I can never understand why, when I was around them, after about 5 minutes, I would feel like I had run a 10-mile race. I had to get away, but they delighted in people's misfortune and the gossip and I'm not saying they're a bad person, but they were in that state, right? That was their thing. And I really felt like I was living close enough to somebody that I don't think they were doing it purposefully, but they just delighted in that. And again, I finally figured it out. It's like, no wonder, because I kept thinking, why do I always feel this way? Like I could not be around them for more than about 5 minutes. And
but it makes complete sense. If you think about it, I'm going to go all conspiracy for a moment. Delicately, of course. Delicately. Do you notice how sometimes, the world will go through this roller coaster of you feel up, you feel down. Do you think it's a mere coincidence right now that things are the way they are? Yeah, maybe a lot of kinds of energy vampires out there, but things are the way they are because there are many beings that feed off that, including the living. Okay.
Yep.
You look at the state. Do you think it's coincidence that pretty much the entire planet is going through this downswing right now of just that low feeling of hopelessness and anger and confusion and division? But then you have those out there who are very love and light and who will be just like, no, this is an age of awakening. Everything is being brought to the forefront. You see what I mean?
It's a wonderful time to be alive.
Right? Damn it. It is. Right? We're seeing things now. This is awareness at its finest, and the consciousness is evolving. But you see what I mean? Like there's the two sides to every coin. And I think it's how you see it. Is the glass half full or is it half empty? Or be like Wayne, there is no glass. So anyway, right?
Think like me would think outside the box. Think like there is no box.
Exactly. There's no box to think outside of. No, but there is just that. And Misha's comment here is,
I just saw that. I should have told you this highlight stuff. I should have told you.
That's cool. But this is exactly what I'm saying. There's this meme that goes around, and it says where they were talking to a Mennonite or an Amish man, and they said, like, how are you guys still, okay over there? Like, you don't seem to be, affected by what's going on in the world. We don't have a TV.
Yeah.
Pretty simple. The tribes in the Amazon, living your life. That's the way you always do.
And you know what? I'm sure you've seen this. You know what? You could look at people that are like have nothing. They don't even have 2 pennies to rub together.
Yeah.
But they are so happy.
Yes.
They, again, I'm going to go back to even the dog whisperer on right now. So I've been watching it, trying to tune up my dog. And what he talked about was we were so poor and we knew we were poor, but I couldn't have been any happier in my life because there was family, there was love, and we were happy with what we had. It was a different way of living. Or people in the Amazon, right?
Yes. I think you look at people in very small communities, who live off the beaten path. I've traveled, I've been so fortunate and so grateful to have been able to travel to the many different parts of the world that I've traveled to, because I see how so many different people live, and I remember being in Egypt. And I thought to myself at first, I'm like, oh my goodness, it feels so primitive. Like people are still walking along the side of the polluted Nile, baskets on their head. You can see huts, small makeshift houses on the horizon. And I thought, oh my gosh, like my first thing was like, oh, those poor people. I'll tell you something. Little did I know that the tour I was on was taking us into one of these communities. And they worked with the community by bringing in tourists, and they would make food like flatbreads, and they would have fruit. And, here I am trying to explain that I'm this poor Canadian. It's like, oh, I can't eat that. My stomach is not going to like it. And the guy looks at me and he goes, it's very insulting to say no. I ate it and I suffered for 2 days.
Oh no.
I did, but I'll tell you something. They were the happiest people. They were singing and I looked at the guide and I said, oh, I said, it's nice that they're doing this for our benefit. Like I'm being naive. And he goes, no, they're genuinely happy that you're here. I'm thinking, yeah, but because I couldn't imagine. I was much, I'm like 20 years old, 24 years old at the time. Right. So we think we're worldly, but we're really not. And And they just like, no, like these people, this is how they live, this is their life, but they're happy. They're happy for this opportunity, but they're so happy, and the kids are running around, off in the distance. They were happy, and you could see like this really nice, thriving little community. And here my naive rear end comes in and just it makes assumptions, and that's the problem, is that we're full of assumptions.
I hear you on that too, right? Yeah. And I lately I've been saying most people don't even leave their own backyard, and then you get this feeling of, say North America will take. Yes, we've got issues and problems and whatever, but I think if we weren't watching, TV or dialing in the news, I'm not crapping on anybody that is, but I say to people, if you're miserable and you're so concerned about what's going on in the world, if you could just challenge yourself to give yourself a week away from that, your life is going to change, and it's going to change in a good way.
That's true.
Well, you won't be thinking about these things and dwelling on them. And then the first place you go to is fear, right? And then you feel like you're alone. You feel like you've got no control. You feel like, but if you didn't hear about it, it's kind of like if a tree falls in the forest. And
yes. Does anybody hear it? Yeah. Does it make a sound? I know.
It's true.
It is. Right? It is true. It is. I feel, I've met so many incredible people in my life, and you're one of them, right?
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
And we got to give Carrie Lynn a huge shout out, because I've been thinking about this. I do this all the time. And what did I forget to say tonight? That you'll listen to us on 105.3 FM in the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM out of the beautiful city of New Orleans. And I'm going to give Carrie Lynn a shout out, because she did pop in here. I know she must be tired. It was a long drive back from Thunder Bay to the Sioux, but she's got Spirit Switchboard on Fridays here at 6 p.m. Eastern. And then we do Beneath the Hollow Moon on Thursdays at 7. Sorry, I wanted to throw those in there.
No, that's okay. We love our Carrie Lynn.
Yes,
we do. We do. I totally lost where I was at. When she's okay. No, I was probably just babbling anyway.
So I'm going to show off. She made a painting for me for my son, and she put all these channeled messages in there. Isn't that beautiful?
Oh, I love it.
I just, what? I work with my hands all the time, making things. And so this really meant a lot. But you know what? Even, when people are talking, and thank you, Carrie Lynn, even thinking about, because people the unknown creates fear. Yes. And the one thing I say to people all the time too is find little pockets of joy in your life every day. Practice gratitude, right? And again, we get back to raising that vibration. Don't be food, right? And I think life shifts, like your perspective and everything. If you can take a break from the news, or you see something on social media, even if you can, I take the weekends off from social media. Only people I usually talk to will be you, my friend Leanne, or, Carrie Lynn, and it doesn't matter what time. Otherwise, I take the weekend off. And when you do, or say people, they feel like you got to get into every little fight. There's always this swipe and delete. And where I'm going with this is these little changes, I think, really can kind of help you not be food. Right?
No, I agree. It's about regenerating and just rejuvenating, and just taking that time for ourselves, which is something we don't often do. This kid right here. But, sometimes it's just making somebody else's life a little better. Wayne and I, when we'll go out sometime and we'll go to a drive-through, he's always, hi, how are you? How's your day today? Has he been having a good day? And I look at him, like, you're so kind. Like, he goes, no. He goes, and he laughs. He goes, I'm going to make, the whole world better, one drive-through at a time. And he does. People freaking love him. And I'm just sitting there like, even going through, a popular drive-through here, popular both sides of the border, and I'm not going to plug them, but
I know what you're talking about,
right? And he goes, "How's your day going?" And the woman just says, "Living the dream. What can I get you?"
I'm telling you,
but he was so nice to her. She totally did a switch by the time he got there.
And then she passes that on to other people, because I'm
Pay
going to
it
tell you,
forward.
I was in line, and I think we're talking
Yeah.
about the same establishment. And I
Yes.
was ordering a beverage, I'll say.
Yeah.
And by the time I got up to the window, they said it's free. And I said, why? Well, the person in front of you bought it for you. I cried, and I don't cry very easily, but I just
Aw.
couldn't
I
believe
would
it.
do that so often, pay for the guy behind me.
That I knew you would probably were going to, like, if I brought that up, you would say that,
I'm
right?
one of those guys. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love
but
it.
it's infectious, right? Like when you
Yeah.
do that, or the one thing I love to do is, if I've had somebody that's been very kind and you're in a store, I will ask to see the manager, and the manager always walks up like, okay, what's the problem? And then I tell them, and they go, oh,
You got
I
something
think
nice to
you're going to
say?
complain. I never hear stuff
Yeah.
like this. But that's where this, we get really drawn into this negativity that's going, and there is negativity,
Mhm.
but when you just do little things like that, and I don't share it, nor did you, to brag, if it sort of gives people an idea, because it has ripple effects, right? Like,
Pay it forward. My God, pay it forward. Do you
mhm.
know how many times I have helped someone, and no one's heard this term before, and they'll say, I want to repay you somehow. I'm like, you don't need to repay me. You keeping up with, keep everything we've talked about, that is repayment enough, as you're helping yourself. She goes, no, I want to do something. I said, donate to your favorite charity,
Yes.
go give it to the homeless. I said, just pay it forward. Just
Yeah.
go spend time with somebody. They're like, pay it forward. I'm like, yeah, just do something nice for somebody else. So like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. But they've never heard the term. And it's one that those people say, well, do you have a fee? Just pay it forward. So I say, like, what is that? Pay it forward. It's like it sounds.
But you're right, because I remember when we were in the old home, and their store was quite close, and I'd gone out late at night. They were open 24 hours a day, and it was 2 minutes from my house. And I went to the walk-up window. You couldn't go into the store. And this gentleman walked up, and normally people might have been afraid.
Yeah.
But they had said to me, excuse me, miss, I really would like, I'm really hungry, and I'd like to buy a sandwich, but I don't have enough money. And I said, don't worry about it. I got it for you. But the clerk was being really nasty. Like I said, could you grab, whatever sandwiches you have? Don't buy him that. And I said, he's hungry. Could you grab the sandwiches? And then, he wanted to give me his change. And I said, no, but he started to cry. And I'm not saying this to brag, guys. I'm sharing this with you because
it takes so little.
But what I'm going to say is exactly what you just said. He said, well, I'd like to repay you. I said, no. I said, you know what? You're going to run into somebody one day that's going to need some help. And if you can, pay it forward. Those were the words I used to help somebody else.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. It just, it takes so little on the grand scheme of things. And sometimes it is just a smile. Somebody has said to me, goes, October people become more aware of things that are out there, maybe because they go looking for it, maybe because they want the thrill. There's many, many reasons, and they said, well, how do you get away from something like that? And I'm saying exactly what you and I are talking about right now. I said, don't not go out and have fun.
Yeah.
Don't go out and not have fun. It's Halloween. It's spooky month. Have fun.
Yes.
But you know what? Just go with like-minded people, go to public events with like-minded people, and just be aware and just keep smiling. You just start.
Or be open-minded. Maybe, you know what? Have you ever had that happen where you did? I know I have. I really didn't want to go somewhere, but you'd already said, okay, I'll go. And you end up having the time of your life.
Yeah.
Because you don't go in with expectations. It's like, I got to go. I might as well. And before you know it, you're having a great time, right? Because I saw that.
That was me 2 days ago. Like, where is all this crap? Oh, wait, sorry.
Yeah, no, ours was out.
Let Halloween be a thing first.
I know.
Please let us have our day. Yeah. No, but you know what? I think that's the key to everything. You want to avoid, being picking something up, or just don't stop living life, because, we really are our own masters as far
Yes.
as what happens, within our personal space. You cannot handle everything in this world. You can't handle what's going on. I mean, you have no control over it, is what I mean. But the only thing you have control over is how you perceive it, or how you handle, how you deal with it.
Mhm.
It's just, it's all you can really do. It's the only thing you really have any control over is yourself.
It's just that, like I say, when we talk about these topics and people like to talk about them, and I think it's human nature. Oh,
Was
Mash,
it really a swear word?
she's a network manager.
Perk.
Believe me, I have colorful language on, not on air, but I have very colorful language. I'm just going to highlight Carrie's comment. She said, I followed someone that walks out randomly into like a store and gives money to someone that clearly is in hard times, willing to give them their last dollar. And I've seen that. People who have almost
Yeah.
nothing. So many
Yeah.
will give you anything. And then she said, he turns around and gives them $500. And she said, not fake. I
See?
love that. I love
I
it.
love when that happens too. We've done things like that for people. You know,
Do you mean
King
you've given me
Dobby.
a sock? I am my own master now. Dobby is free.
Dobby. I'm taking that sock back to say.
I know
Yeah.
I made it for Christmas. My boys, I made them a whole movie theme. Well, actually, it was my eldest and his fiance, and even the grand puppies had matching outfits. And I have a machine called a Cricut, so I can design stuff and iron it on. But what made me think of that is I got them socks, and it said something about Dobby being freed because they were socks, and it said it on the bottom of the feet.
Say, when you know, you know. Yeah.
When you know, you know. Wayne says, dang, so close.
So sorry. So sorry. Why are you watching? You're not supposed to be outside doing something.
This is more
Speaking
fun.
of taking my sock back. No.
This
Kidding.
is more fun this way, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it is. Oh, apparently Carrie says the S word that ends in T is an acronym. Did you know it was an acronym? It means chip high in transit. Look it up. You're welcome.
That's my girl. There we go.
I did not know that. Oh, and giving you a report. I am done for now. Do you want me to go back?
You're funny.
We all gotta laugh. See, like that, and that's part of it. So even though, like I say, we were talking about a bit of a darker, and Mish says, so we are ship talking.
Okay, exactly.
But even though we're talking about a darker topic,
Mm.
right? And
Yeah.
again, empowering yourself about it, and then too, remember, guys, TV, it's called programming for a reason, right? So just remember that. I was going to say to you earlier, I've been seeing actually a lot more videos, even, and I believe this, that your words are spells, right? Spelling, there's all kinds of things with this, but it's music too, right? Like I
Mhm.
never paid attention to the lyrics till probably in the last 20 years. And then
Yeah.
when you do, it's interesting to pay attention to that, right?
Spell casting. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
Mhm.
Spelling, spell casting. It's true.
Mhm.
It's true. I think, we're just so conditioned in life that, I mean, everything has to be put in plain sight.
Mhm.
That's the way it is. Again, let me get my tinfoil crown on over here. What's this? Where is
Yes,
it?
get your crown. We talk about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, just smack this on a little bit, and there is that belief that we have, this upper crust of people who do a lot of ceremonial things and ritualistic things, to advance themselves. And the key, so allegedly, karma doesn't come back and bite them in the butt, essentially, is to put it in the public. So it's put in the public right in front of your eyes, whether you're looking at this great, you know, dance ensemble going on stage, when you're seeing your favorite people on stage, you know, celebrity acting, whatever the case may be. Sometimes they're ritualistic, and you can usually tell which ones are, which ones aren't. And you have certain songs, movies, television shows. The list goes on and on and on and on. Sometimes it's in the form of a logo,
I
right?
was just thinking that. You're reading my mind tonight a few
I know.
times. I was just going to say it.
Let's just go back. Yeah. But you know, it has to be put out there. And we become so conditioned to just seeing all this crazy stuff that we don't think anything more about it other than, hey, it is what it is, without really, really looking at it. And now, you know, as all of our lighter people are saying, love and light, awareness, it's all being brought to the forefront. But realistically, so much of it has always been there. So there's a lot of ways that, you know, darkness can infiltrate. But I believe, you know, as an energy worker, that it can absolutely be flipped on its head just through light work. And that comes from within.
I agree totally, because, you know, I think historically the veil started to thin around this time, but I don't know, the way things are, the veil almost feels like it's almost not there. What's your thoughts on it?
The way things seem to be happening, as I mean, certain times a year, I feel especially, I could tell you, I'm being like just swamped. Like the last 6 months, especially the amount of stuff that has been making its way through my email has been crazy with what people are going through. So, do I believe that it's non-existent? I believe it goes in waves. I believe that it's not hard to get through at all. I've never really thought it was hard to get through, however. I think for some of us, it's just easier than others. But does it come down to awareness again?
I agree with you on that, but you'll hear a lot of people in this field say that, right? Well, we're getting closer, we get Halloween, the and then it just seems like, and I agree with you, in waves. And, you know, we haven't got a ton of time left, but what can you think that might empower people in the way of, if you feel, besides probably calling somebody or connecting with someone who's capable of helping you and guiding you further, but just even little things to empower them if they feel like they've got a problem that's negative or whatever in their home?
Oh, so you mean like paranormally speaking?
Yeah, just not necessarily demons or anything, but just, I think that helps coming from someone like you do this work, right? That will empower them, because most people can't just show up on your door the next day if you're going to call them. Because I know that really, really helped us, you know, when we were going through what we were going through, is if somebody had just said, this is, you know, something that can really help you. I learned it myself by shifting our vibration was one thing. It really, really helped.
It's a big one. I think what's really big here, the one thing that I've heard of, or that I've been told, that I've heard time after time again, because I work pretty much one type of activity. It's that simple. So for me, it's going to be a lot of repetition with how people communicate with me. But you believed us. And we needed somebody to believe us. We needed to know we weren't going crazy. We needed to know that things were actually happening and that someone believed us. Because I go in and my thing has always been like, let me take the weight for a while and just relax. Let me deal with it. And you just relax. You know, I believe you. I'm here and I will support you. Whatever the case may be, you know, sometimes people are going through things. It doesn't mean that there's actually something there. But something is leading them to believe that there's something there. So if you're committing to help somebody, then you know, have to try to make the effort to go the extra mile to either get them the help they need in one way or another. But, you know, I can tell you the majority of the time that I have worked with people, it's most certainly something going on. And sometimes it's psychokinesis. It's just a projection of their own energy. Other times it's just, you know, mischievous spirits. Sometimes it's just a spirit as kind as can be, but they just aren't, you know, the people just can't they're not aware that they're there. They're not open to it, and they don't realize that they're impeding on this poor spirit who's just trying to get their attention and just wants some help or some acknowledgement. Sometimes it is something that simple. But I think just being an ear and being supportive and, just listening, whether you believe it or not, just be courteous and just listen. Sometimes that's all they need.
Michelle said this, and I can agree with you 100%. Michelle, she said, yes, validation is huge. I can tell you that was one of the biggest things, because I had people, I'm very reluctant, unless it's obvious, to say to someone, you're faking it. Because I can tell you, I had people do that to me. I was diagnosed with not seeing any evidence, nothing. It was somebody I'd met through a friend of mine that had a show, and they said, yeah, give me a show tomorrow. We'll see what we can do. And they told me, they didn't know I was a nurse or anything, that I was suffering from, are you ready for this, Michelle? Because I am going to make a t-shirt with this one day. I was suffering from intergalactic satellite goldfish, and I was causing all this. I was making it up, right? And when you hear that, you already feel crazy. Like I said, I never went looking for the paranormal. Not that any of us really do, but when we've had it around us our whole life, right? And then someone tells you you're making it up, you're faking it, then you even feel more alone. You just think, well, maybe I really am crazy. So I just love that you said that, and Michelle added that. Yeah, validation is huge.
It's important. Just be there. Just be, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing properly, you're going to leave, and they're going to feel good about the fact that you are there, and that they help you. And to me, that is priceless, is that they feel safe and that they feel that they're not alone during the time where they need somebody so desperately, right?
You do, because like I've always said this too, I chit chat wherever I go. I always say I don't always feel like peopling. Lots of times just go get what I need to get and come home. But if I'm standing in line, someone will usually talk to you. But when you're going through something like this is not something you're going to be discussing with people in the grocery store. And most people around you that say don't believe in the paranormal, you really feel alone. So that was so powerful that you shared that. And I really appreciate that you shared that. I think that's going to help a lot of people to hear that.
I hope so. But remember, you really are in control. I just think that whatever it is that's making you feel like you're not is winning. So just don't let it. So,
Wayne says keeping is hard, and Carrie's adding, OMG, yes, being around people that have been in a similar situation of any kind is this kind of struggle is needed. I agree. I said that, Kevin. I said I'm making a t-shirt. I already looked at it. This was years ago. I hung on to that phrase and I went, what the heck are you talking? I didn't say it, but I'm suffering from intergalactic satellite goldfish.
I have to say it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, but okay. Sorry, not sorry.
No, I actually ended up, I didn't hang up on them, but I just said, you know what? Thank you for your time. I'm going to go now. And I felt even more isolated, because then, people I sort of met in the community that supported me, they reached out to every one of them and told them I was making this all up and all this stuff, right? And then you feel really alone. So I'm so glad you added that.
Thank you. But thank you for mentioning that, because I've never heard that before, and I have to say it's a first for me.
I thought I had told you that one.
I don't get enough of those anymore. The first
satellite goldfish, and now coming for Sea Sun Dragon saying intergalactic goldfish tea merch. Oh, seriously, I'm looking at it because I thought, you know what, if you had to bestow that, quote unquote, if you can't
see, probably come after you for some kind of like ownership price.
Probably doesn't even remember. Any person that I've shared that with goes, what?
What is that exactly? Yeah, no, that's just wrong.
Yeah, see, sorry, I got a highlight there. Cav's adding, yes, Laura, we talked about it. Space helmet goldfish with purple hair and a spaceship.
That's a look. You can trademark that.
That's a look. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
spaceship could say UPRN or
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Shoot for the stars. That's what I
yeah.
say.
Oh, I like that too. There you go.
Yeah.
Intergalactic satellite goldfish. We all want to be suffering from it. Shoot to the stars.
Shoot for the stars. Exactly. Your problems will be gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Oh,
gone.
good
There you
grief.
go.
Jesus.
I'm so glad this I swear to God, this is the fastest show I've done in a long time. It went by
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I loved it. Thank you so much for
Oh,
coming on.
pleasure. Pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's always so much fun sitting across from you and just
Me too.
having
I love it too.
interesting
And
dialogue.
we have the
Yeah.
best chat, you guys. Thank you. You're always so kind to everybody here, and you ask the best questions or you make the best comments, and we love that you're here. So thank you. And where can people get a hold of you, Michelle, or your shows? Not that people don't know in the chat, but you can remind them. I have the wrong time for Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, yeah, tomorrow afternoon, I've got Mark Ollie, and we're talking about the ancient belief in a connection between witches and the devil, and the ancient.
Oh, no, I
belief
got to
of-
be watching that tomorrow.
Yeah, it's
Definitely.
tomorrow afternoon. That's it. Yeah, 2 p.m. Eastern. So he's really knowledgeable. He's written a lot of books on it because we want to talk about that. I'm like, yes, okay. So anyway, and Wednesday night, my dear friend Nathaniel Gillis joins me, and it's going to be.
Thinking of him because you talked about it before, and I'm thinking, I don't know what his. I swear to God, we got this Vulcan mind melt going. As soon as you say something, I'm like thinking.
Share the brain. Share the brain. Yeah, share the brain.
Well,
but yeah, he's coming on and talking about risky business, flirting with the unseen, and he's got his own spin on everything. Deep research with some of the most respected people within this field and many fields. So he's just kind of be like, why do people just feel that they can throw caution to the wind this time of the year? So he's going to get into some of that as well. And then Thursday night is going to be Daryl Walsh, and we're talking just about the origins and traditions of Halloween.
Oh my gosh, you got like kick butt. I won't say the A word shows. So you always do it.
I'm just showing off. That's all. I'm just showing off.
It's awesome. And you guys don't go anywhere because Preston Dennett and Dolly Saffron are coming up next, I believe. I have that written down with the Light Gate. You guys don't want to miss that.
That's a big
one. Yes, Carrie Lynn and I will be doing a show. I know she's going to be home. We talked about it this morning, and I said, don't stress about it. We have a list, but we're a week behind because we had to take 1 week off. But we'll have a great Halloween topic for you guys. We have a whole bunch listed that we're going to do. We're going to make the decision. I think she gets back tomorrow where she lives. So, yes.
Ooh, fun.
And then, next week, I have Brad Burkholz, I think his name is. He's got a brand new book on the paranormal and a whole bunch of spooky ooky stuff next week for the Angel Rock. So again, Michelle, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I also want to thank Carnation because they bring all the shows on Monday to you here. They sponsor us. We have Carnation Monday. So thank you to Carnation. You guys ever want to get a hold of me, you can. I'm available on all social media platforms. And otherwise, you guys have a great night. Stay tuned for Dolly and Preston next. And we'll see you on Thursday. And Michelle, see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye. Yes.